Welcome back, everyone. We'll go on to the next committee, which is Lake Whatcom and Natural Resources Committee, and that is chaired by Councilmember Dan Hamill.
Thank you. Joining me on the committee this afternoon are Council Members Borneman and Knutson. We have one item before us this afternoon for information only. This is the Lake Whatcom Management Program update. On July 24, 2017, council meeting, council requested staff to provide an update on the Lake Whatcom Management Plan. The city staff, together with Whatcom County staff, will present highlights from 2017 and a funding summary for 2018. And Renee LaCroix is here to take us through.
Hi, good afternoon. Renee LaCroix, Public Works. We'll be presenting on the Lake Whatcom program per council's request earlier in the year. We're going to do a short update. I brought Gary Stoika from Whatcom County Natural Resources so that he can talk about what the county's been doing, and we can talk a little bit about what the county's funding has been, or funding conversations has been. So we're talking about the 2015 to 2019 work plan, which was adopted back in 2015. It's the third year in a 5-year plan, and we'll have another full update in March, like we always do, for the Lake Whatcom Joint Councils and Commission meeting. For today, we're going to talk about some of the program areas. So as you know, there's 10 program areas. Today we're going to provide brief updates on the land preservation and the stormwater, and then some of our administrative commitments through the TMDL process, and then about funding. So the first one is about land preservation. The green areas represent the reconveyance lands. That's about 7,800 acres of land that's been protected. And then the purple areas are the City of Bellingham's property acquisition program. That's about 2,100 acres protected and 800 development units removed from the watershed. You've seen this graphic many times. I'm going to zoom into what we did in 2017, which is in the north end of the watershed. We acquired 3 properties, the Doschuk, Evans, and Schlichting. I always have to think through those before I say them. And you can see where they are. They're the red dots, and you can see that they might be small in size, but they do complement our existing properties and expand kind of those key properties that were in the middle of existing preserve areas. So we're building on what we've already done. And in total, it's 9 acres and 3 development units. And as you all know, the total maximum daily load for Whatcom County came out last year. And the city and the county are required, as part of that TMDL, to submit an implementation plan to Department of Ecology. And we did that in October in 2017. And then the next step is for Ecology to adopt that implementation plan, or the items in the implementation plan, into the NPDES permit. And we expect that to happen in August 2018. And then we'll rewrite the 5-year plan to match the timelines. We'll be doing that in March of 2020. And then between now and March 2023, we're going to be implementing the 5-year milestones and revise the 10-year milestones. And then by December 2029, we'll complete the 10-year milestones. So some of the implementation plan highlights, I just wanted to talk a little bit about these. So as I mentioned, we submitted this to Ecology in October, and this was a plan that outlines how we're going to meet the obligations of the TMDL. And the city and the county worked very closely on development of this plan. We wanted to have a very unified effort where we would set up the framework where we could work well together for the next 10 years. And we integrated the future Lake Whatcom management work plans and NPDES permit cycles over time so that the timelines are going to match up better. And we included specific goals for education and outreach, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a minute, and then stormwater management and enhanced operations and maintenance. And then we'll report on progress annually starting in 2020. The near-term actions that we talked about in the implementation plan include preparation for implementation as early as January 1st, 2018. So there's not going to, the implementation plan that we submitted just builds on everything that we've been doing, and it's going to be hopefully smooth sailing as we roll into 2018. Our education and outreach team specifically is going to be working on watershed-wide surveys and outreach materials for watershed residents. Our stormwater group is going to begin scoping for capital improvement and retrofit planning projects. And then we have several models going on in the Lake Whatcom watershed, both the loading and response model, and those will be reviewed, and a list of additional data needed that'll be completed by the end of July 2018. So for our stormwater management capital projects that we completed in 2017, we're going to talk through those. And you've seen this map before. The green indicates areas of the watershed that flow into treatment projects that were constructed between 2001 and 2015. The yellow indicates areas that drain into projects that were installed in 2016, and then the orange is for 2017 and 18, and what we're going to be talking about next. And in the city's portion, that's East North Street retrofit and East Oregon Street retrofit in the north end of the watershed. This is the East North Street retrofit. And you can see this is what it looked like before. So this was an unpaved road, and you can see the flow coming down here, and it accumulated a lot of sediment as it was running off. And so we installed the treatment areas. So this is the same utility pole in both pictures right here and right here, just for scale. And the project treated 20 acres, and we removed 10 pounds of phosphorus at a construction cost of $319,000. A hard time spitting that out for some reason. And this is what it looks like down on the lower end. So these are shots on North Shore, before and after shots. And this is what it looks like from an aerial view. So the pink is the outline of the treated area. The green is what is forested. The blue are impervious roadways, and then the gray are structures. And where the yellow stars are, those are areas where we installed high-performance sediment traps or modular wetlands. And the blue is where we built roadside treatment systems and did infrastructure upgrades. So some of the costs that we quote are not only costs for the project itself, but while we're in there, if we find things that need to be done, we go ahead and do those as part of the project. And so that does often increase project costs, but the long-term overall benefit increases as well. This is what the East Oregon Street retrofit looks like, both during and after. This is a project that treated 20 acres, and it was removed 11 pounds of phosphorus at a construction cost of $463,000. And this is what that same project looks like where it outfalled into Silver Beach Creek. So this is before there was just a lot of overland runoff that would erode the bank as it flowed into the creek, and this is what it looks like after. So there's some drainage to prevent any sediment from reaching the creek. This is what it looks like from an aerial view, the whole treatment area, and the green is forested. And then where the yellow stars are, we installed modular wetland systems. Where the blue stars are where we repaired and upgraded infrastructure, and the red stars eliminated erosion at the creek outfall. So you can see we take a treatment train approach as the water moves through the watershed, trying to get various objectives completed at various points along the way. So I'm going to hand it off to Gary, and he's going to talk about the county stormwater projects and then go through some funding conversations that the county council has, and Carl Weimer is also in the audience to answer any questions.
Thanks, Renee. Good afternoon. As Renee said, I'm going to go through the projects that the county has done. Again, with the same photo here showing the projects that have been completed. We're going to, let me just make sure I got the right thing. I'm going to zoom in here on Agate Bay, which are those three orange areas on Agate Bay in Basin 3. This just kind of zooms in a little bit to that area and shows these basins. In this area here, we're going to zoom in, and you can see we're going to be doing a project that's going to do some channel stabilization, put in some check dams to slow down velocities and hold back some sediment. And you can see there also in the blue, we're going to install some treatment vaults. In this area here, you can see there that we're going to do also a check dam and a couple of treatment vaults. And then zoom into this last area here where we've got a media filter drain, much as the one that we just saw in East North or East Oregon. And those are in the orange, and then the blue are the treatment vaults. This project is going to be constructed next year. It was designed this year. And just kind of a summary of what's involved in the Agate Bay stormwater improvement thing. We've got 6 stormwater filter vaults, 1,600 linear feet of media filter drains, a pre-treatment vault, and the check dams, as I mentioned a minute ago, installed into ditches to promote infiltration, and of course stream channel stabilization to reduce erosion. And using those same colored stars there, you can see which ones are treatment devices or vaults, infrastructure upgrades, or other improvements. Again, that'll happen in 2018. One of the other things that we've been working on in the county as far as our capital program is we're nearing the end right now of our current capital list. So we just did an update of the capital section of our Lake Whatcom Comprehensive Stormwater Plan. Of course, since it's for the county, it's just in the unincorporated areas. And the idea of this plan is set up about the next 10 years worth of capital projects to give us another list to work on after we exhaust the last couple in our current plan. And as we've been doing for years now, we want to identify the most effective phosphorus removal measures. We're looking to, when we look at these projects, we're prioritizing the most bang for our buck and identifying the locations where these measures will give the greatest benefit. So just continuing on with what we have done with the last couple of 10-year plans, but a new plan has just been completed and it goes before council. I think it's introduced Wednesday night and then it goes before council for approval later this month. And to give you an idea of the comprehensive stormwater plan, these are very bizarre. They look different on the screen here than they were, but the scale is kind of small there, but you can kind of see that we've got projects all over the Lake Whatcom Basin, the unincorporated. A total of 39 projects are in the plan, including 20 media filter drains, 6 underground treatment systems, and 4 planted treatment systems, and 9 stream restorations. So 39 projects, that'll definitely keep us busy for at least 10 years, if not longer. Now I want to switch gears and go to the funding part of the discussion and talk about the county's funding. And before I go into that, I just kind of wanted to give you a brief overview of the county's water resources programs. We've broken them out into basically there's 3 main program areas. And I'm just going to briefly tell you what's in each of them. First of all, we have our River and Flood Program. And our River and Flood Program implements our National Flood Insurance Program. It does they do emergency response during floods. We also do maintenance and repair of our flood infrastructure, our levees and dikes. And we also do floodplain planning. And what we've embarked on recently is an update of our comprehensive flood hazard management plan. The last time that plan was updated was in 1999, and so a lot has happened since then. One of the big things that's happened is the ESA listing of salmon, and this new plan will be much more integrative. It's going to look at fish, flood, and farms. It's a very collaborative process. I think we had 50 people at 50 different agency folks at a meeting recently. And then also we do our capital improvements, which come out of the flood planning effort. So that is the bulk of the actual dollars in the flood program is the capital improvements that come out of these different implementing plans. The second of the 3 program areas is what we call our natural resource program, and that includes our water quality program, which right now is heavily focused on fecal coliform, mostly in the rural areas. I wouldn't say ag, the rural areas in general of Whatcom County. We've got a big effort right now. The PIC stands for Pollution Identification and Correction. It's a program where we go out and do a lot of monitoring, try to narrow down where things are coming from, and then do corrections there. And it also involves a lot of outreach and education. That program right now is about 1/3 grant funded. Another program area is water rights and watershed planning. As you could see from the presentation a little earlier, and as anybody who's been around here very long knows, we've got a lot of water quantity issues to deal with, and we've been working on them for about 20 years, or actually probably longer than that, but intensively for the last 20 years, and there's still quite a bit of work to be done to implement projects and plans in order to get water for cities, ag, industries, and of course people. We also have salmon recovery in our natural resources program. That's mostly housed within our flood program. We try to incorporate salmon recovery into all of our flood planning efforts. Of course, you're very familiar with Aquatic Invasive Species Program. In this case, we contract with the city and provide funding for that. And we also have a Marine Resources Program, which is fully grant funded. The third program area is our Stormwater NPDES area, and I'm sure you are all very familiar with that since the city has an NPDES program as well, where we do inspection and repair and reporting of our stormwater infrastructure. And for the county, that is primarily paid for out of our road fund because most of our infrastructure is related to our roads. Again, the road fund is a property tax that's paid for just by the unincorporated residents. And in areas where we can't use or it's not appropriate to use road funds, we supplement that with flood funding. And of course, what everybody is here to talk about today is the Lake Whatcom Management Program. And that has all the elements that, of course, Renee touched on, those 10 program areas. From the county level, that's predominantly paid for out of the flood program, except for the capital portion of it, which is predominantly paid for with real estate excise tax and grants. And real estate excise tax is just in the unincorporated area. So, you know, all these things that Renee mentioned, we do TMDL response and all of that, but with the capital program, and then we also have a specific part of the capital program, which I'm betting that you guys have heard of, is the homeowner incentive program, which is where we provide incentives for people to do improvements on folks' property that it's on private property, but we want them to install features that enhance water quality. And that program right now is funded predominantly by the city, but the county's portion is from flood funding. So back in 2014, the Whatcom County Council passed what's called the Water Action Plan, and it was a plan set forth to kind of enhance our water programs. And the four big elements that came out of that 2014 Water Action Plan, as you see here, was one, to establish an NPDES program. The county really didn't have a formal program at that time. We did elements of the NPDES program, but didn't have a formal program, so we implemented that with the road and the flood fund. We also greatly enhanced our PIC program that I just mentioned, and we do that predominantly with flood funds, but we do get a significant amount of EPA grant funding. And then, of course, with respect to Lake Whatcom, we made a commitment to meet the city's contribution to meet the 50-year timeline to implement the TMDL, reduce the phosphorus in a 50-year timeline, and basically that meant committing about, on average, $1 million a year per jurisdiction between, you know, the city contributes $1 million a year, and of course we contribute $1 million per year. And then the fourth big thing was an update of the Comprehensive Flood Hazard Management Plan, which I just mentioned. That would be paid for by flood fund, and of course, especially for implementation, we'd be relying heavily on state grants. So here is a graph that shows a flood fund balance, since it's our main source of funding at the county, through the years. And the graphics really kind of got wonky here over here, but basically you can see that right around 2014-15, the Water Action Plan was implemented. When the plan was implemented, the county knew full well that we were expanding services but not adding revenue. But we had a lot of reserves at the time, and we knew we had several years to come up with a revenue fix. So you can see here, so the plan gets implemented, 2015, and we start taking a hit on our reserves, and by the end of this year, we're expected to be around what looks like about $8 million. And at this point, with our 2018 budget, we're expecting to finish off just below $6 million. And the important thing to note here is this line here of $5 million, which by county resolution, we have to maintain a $5 million balance in our flood fund in order to have money in case we have a flood emergency and have ready access to that money. So now we can make it through next year, but after next year, we're going to start running into funding trouble if we don't address the funding issue. So earlier this year, and actually over the last couple of years, but especially this year, we presented to council a couple of service levels. Service level 1 is our current funding level. Basically, what would our program look like if we just had to live with what we currently bring in? And then secondly was, what are we currently doing right now, and how much funding would we need to maintain that? And then the third level of service is kind of similar to the second level of service, but it's basically some of these things we've committed to, like the Lake Whatcom program and the flood program, hadn't been fully implemented already, but we've kind of committed to those. So what level of funding will we need to actually meet those commitments? And the fourth item was to enhance the enhanced Lake Whatcom program, and that primarily came about by the fact that the county does not have the funds to fully match the city on the homeowners incentive program, but it also recognized that we might have some other costs that are going to be coming along in coming years that are going to be above and beyond what we currently have, and namely those are other residential retrofits that might be done with homeowners associations. Also, as we build more projects and we use real estate excise tax to construct those, more projects leads to more maintenance costs, and you can't use real estate excise tax to maintain those. Also, we're seeing that we're starting to see the effects of state grant funding decreasing on some of these projects. So if we don't have as much state grant funding, we're going to have to make that up in order to maintain our capital commitments. So we, staff presented council with a couple of options. It's pretty binary. You can see there, option one, no action, which results in significant reduction in service, and those were all kind of spelled out. And the second option was to find other sources of revenue. And the options that were presented were, one is to increase the flood tax, and just to give folks a sense of what that would mean, in order to fund a level of service 3, you would have to increase, it would be about a 50% increase in the flood tax, but what that would mean to the average homeowner would be about $20 per year for a $300,000 house. So, and then the other option is to create a fee-for-service type scenario, much like the city has with the stormwater utility, and that's where you charge people based on impervious surface, and you can target that to areas that need the extra funding. The option that council has decided to go with is a stormwater utility for the Lake Whatcom watershed. And so I was going to let Carl Weimers here from County Council. These items, I've got the council's next steps here, but the flood tax, the flood funding, we do an annual budget for flood funding. And our regular cycle would be for council to address that on November 21st. And then council also gave us direction earlier this year that they would like us to implement sort of a special district for Lake Whatcom. And we are moving forward with that and plan to bring an ordinance to council on December 5th. And the idea with that would create the district, but then we would have to do a lot of work and public outreach in order to determine what's going to be paid for with that district and how it's going to be funded, what's the funding rates and charges, and what exactly we're going to pay for with that. And so the way that would be set up, we would resolve those in 2018 and begin fees in 2019. And so that's the direction we're going. And I brought Carl along so that he could address kind of. He, of course, can't speak for the council. He's just one council member, but give a council perspective on where these things are going. So, Carl?
Yeah, and I'm glad to answer any questions. I guess the main point for bringing me here was just to nod my head and say, there was a unanimous council vote to move forward on a stormwater utility district. The devil will be in the details in 2018, as you see, because we're already getting pushback from places like Sudden Valley and people who have invested money to meet our new stormwater regs that say no net phosphorus, and they're saying, well, why should I have to pay for stormwater if I'm already invested extra money to make sure I'm not putting any phosphorus in the lake? So there's some legitimate arguments. I think some of us were hoping we'd be a year ahead of this so we could perhaps start collecting some of the money next year, but as Gary pointed out, we have enough money in the flood fund to cover the 2018 expenses. So I'm glad to answer any questions. We have a number of big water gorillas in our room across the street from certain Supreme Court decisions, and I think there'll be a discussion about the flood tax at our November 21st meeting, but that may be more for raising money for other water issues than for Lake Whatcom.
Committee members.
I want to thank the both staffs for coming forward. You know, we get together once a year, and then you report to us maybe once, maybe twice a year. People see that. They're always asking, what are you doing for the lake? What are you doing for the lake? Well, we just saw what we're doing for the lake, and I just want to thank both staffs for what they're doing day by day. And, you know, we have that 50-year TMDL. I'm a little more optimistic than that. I think it's going to happen a lot faster than 50 years, and that's a good thing. And to Carl, I might not get the chance to say this, but thanks for your service on the county council. You are sorely going to be missed, whether it's lake issues, what you did with pipeline safety, not only for Bellingham, but for the whole United States of America. You, my friend, will be sorely missed, and thank you for everything you did while you were on the council.
Yeah.
Terry.
Yeah, I just want to say applaud the council for taking the steps to do the stormwater utility thing. When we did our stormwater utility district, we took a lot of hits. So I know that's not an easy thing to do. You know going in that you're going to get beat up, but you know it's the right thing to do. And thank you for doing that, because I know when we did it, oh boy, my ears still hurt. But it's proven to be the right thing to do, and people do get over it and get used to it and then start seeing the benefits of doing it. So thank you.
I'll recognize Lilliquist.
Thank you, Dan. So I'm not on the committee, but I want to appreciate what Gene said. Thanks for showing us all the work being done. I think what we're seeing is that there's tens of millions of dollars of development in the watershed, and it's costing us millions to control the drainage and runoff that's created by that development. We just have to step up to that need. Gary, you described 4 levels of funding. My words are horrible, bad, disappointing, and okay. I mean, truthfully, I think that only the highest level of funding, where we actually move beyond just the kind of the status quo of our current commitments and step up our commitments. I've registered my disappointment with the 50-year time frame all along. I'd like us to do faster, so I really appreciate the fact that the county is creating this stormwater utility district, because the funding puzzle is really important, and we just can't accept, I don't think this county can accept levels 1 or 2, and even 3, as I said, is disappointing, and 4 is, I think, where we should be aiming for public safety. Just that's a comment. Don't need a response.
Okay. Councilmember Vargas.
I too want to say, wow, we've come a long way in regards to collaborating on the lake since I first served on that committee, and it's really great to see. One thing that I am kind of curious on is the HIP program, because it does focus mostly on residences, and I believe in 2016 we started doing some of the county, and I'm kind of curious where we are in regards to city versus county residencies, and because I know our contribution is different as well.
Right. So Renee LaCroix, Public Works, we spent a lot of staff time in 2017 making sure that we heard what the residents and the businesses and the community had to say about our first version of HIP, and did some surveys and analysis and took that information to make HIP, what we call HIP 2.0, a lot better going forward. We contracted with the county to be the primary point person, so the city's contracting with the county. The county in turn hired the Whatcom Conservation District to be the face of the program. The Whatcom Conservation District hired new staff to go out, and they've been training heavily with county staff and the city staff, but the Conservation District will be the face of the program moving forward. And so we did a tremendous amount of work of making sure that all the structure is in place to have a program that will look at not only Basin 1, but expanded to Basin 2. Do you want to add anything to that, Gary?
No, I was just going to echo that. I mean, a lot of work has been done. We've done specs for homeowners. We've done. The city developed a new website. We branded it. We did some. The term I'm thinking of is the permit, where it's a general permit for some of these. So a lot of work has been done this year, a lot more than I think we even thought needed to be done. It just meant that we didn't get off the ground very soon, and so we've got a lot of projects in the works, but we think it's really going to take off next year, since we've done all this work this year.
Okay, other questions? Mayor?
Not necessarily a question, but a question and a comment. The comment is, I'm really glad you picked the stormwater utility instead of just the flood tax. And if we're going to use the flood tax for something else, because residents in the city of Bellingham pay the flood tax too. So I think with the utility tax, with the stormwater tax that you're raising, you're going to get new people that have not necessarily been paying their fair share into that particular pot. So I really appreciate you broadening the base. And then secondly, when you were talking about the amount of phosphorus we've kept out, I look at the preservation that we've done, which basically is keeping any from going in. And I really like the emphasis on reducing the amount based on the developed properties, different than just buying the property up, because buying the property up is very important and it protects the lake, but going back and retrofitting and doing the other things that you're all doing is going to show that larger decrease in phosphorus than what we see just when we purchase properties. So, because it sounded really impressive, because we're talking about pounds and ounces, and I know doesn't ever sound too impressive, but these actions actually did. So I want to thank the city and the county staffs for working together.
I just had one more specific question regarding, there were two examples that were shown on the retrofits east-north, construction cost of $319,000. And there's another, I think it was East Oregon, if I'm not mistaken, and about the same amount of phosphorus removed, but the costs were much more, they're $463,000. Is it just a function of how the sites are physically that there's the cost difference there?
Yeah, the site-specific needs and constraints, and then the additional, as I mentioned, when we go in and do these sorts of projects, if we see something in the system that needs to be fixed anyway, we'll fix it anyway, and so sometimes that plays with the numbers a little bit.
Okay. And then I just briefly comment, the HIP program, the Homeowner Incentive Program, is a greatly more cost-efficient program versus a capital facilities going in. Both are needed, there's no doubt about it, but those two and the land acquisition are some of the more primary strategies in terms of getting to that 50-year TMDL. So I just want to thank county and city staff for the work that's being done. I think it's a big team effort, and I'm glad that we're doing it. Any other questions, comments? Okay, end of committee. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, staff. Thank you.